Dan Schneider is the Vice President of Media Research Center and Free Speech America, and he's joined us. And Dan, it's good to have you back on the program. And how are you doing this Thursday morning?
It's chilly outside, but I'm doing well. Thanks, Joe.
It's amazing. Wasn't it 20 degrees like 3 weeks ago when we were like, oh, yeah, it's a little bracing. And now we've gotten used to 50 and 60 during the overnight pretty quickly. So,
yeah.
I was talking about this with some folks. I was at an event with Jonathan Emord, who wrote a book called The Authoritarians. And I said, you watch as the Democrats on the Weaponization of Government Committee just harangue Matt Taibbi, just testifying for him. Well, we know either Elon Musk is your source and you're not telling us, or he isn't your source and you're not telling us. And this, yes, the unhaired on fire kind of thing that if Jim Jordan had done that when they were in the minority, he would have been called out onto every carpet out there on the commentariat floor. But while that was all going on, the IRS is knocking on his door, and there seems to be crickets regarding this story outside of places like this program. Dan, is this the most chilling use of our royal presidency and their dictatorial bureaucracy that they can send after with their police departments after citizens speaking up?
Well, yeah, you already pointed out, but it deserves emphasis. While testifying before the weaponization of the federal government committee, the IRS comes knocking on his door. This is not an exaggeration. This is what actually happened, but it's important to keep something in mind here. The intimidation of sending the IRS was not directed at Matt Taibbi, even though the IRS agent showed up at his doorstep. Mm-hmm. The intimidation is really directed at every single American who cares about our country, who says, I disagree with this Biden administration. The IRS and the deep state were sending a clear message to every single one of us. If you step out of line, we're going to step on you. This is what that IRS agent was really saying to all of us when he knocked on Matt Taibbi's door. And this is so consistent what we've seen throughout this administration. If you're a pro-life protester, you get arrested. And when you get arrested, it's not like somebody's knocking on your door gently. Agents show up with guns drawn. They are trying to intimidate all the pro-life community who doesn't like some of the laws on the books. You see this time and time again. James O'Keefe, formerly with Project Veritas, twice now, the FBI has shown up at his door with guns drawn. This is what this administration does. It's intimidation to the highest degree.
Dan, I want to pick up on, and you jumped ahead on my notes, so fair is fair. Now turnabout is fair play, because I wanted to talk about the James O'Keefe issue, because I'm told that some of the reason, though it's purported otherwise, that the board needed him gone was that they had grown comfortable in the establishment of Project Veritas, but they were facing investigations, and the process becomes the punishment kind of things that that as a nonprofit they didn't want to undergo. So it was get rid of O'Keefe, or we're coming after you, like Andrew Cuomo threatened to do with banks that lent money to gun manufacturers.
Well, Joe, James O'Keefe is not alone here. 100 days into the Biden administration, I got what's called a target letter from the DOJ saying you are a target. We are coming after you. And DOJ came in and they interrogated and interviewed many of my colleagues. They were threatening me with prosecution. This is now becoming, dare I say, common in this administration to use the power of the police state to come after political opponents. Our whole country was founded on the idea that people can govern themselves and that we can have civil disagreements and our fights will be, ultimately consummated in the ballot box. We are supposed to be, living in a pluralistic society where people live with each other even though we disagree. But this regime cannot stand dissent. And they are working with big tech and legacy media to silence conservatives, and they are doing it at the point of a gun. It is outrageous.
Well, you talk about the DOJ, and I think it bears repeating, and we watched it happen to members of the Trump administration. If you give inconsistent answers, even on arcane procedural things like, so what did you have for breakfast today, Dan? I'm sorry, you told us you had eggs yesterday, and all of a sudden you're facing charges for lying to a federal agent. I mean, yeah, and there are legislators decades ago who's put their name and their votes on laws that gave these agencies the permission to create these kind of crimes. I mean, it's one thing if somebody steals a car. We've got Commonwealth's attorneys here in Virginia that won't prosecute you for stealing a car. But if you give two different answers to an FBI agent, you're going away for 20, whether you did a crime or not.
Yeah, K.T. McFarland, who was the Deputy National Security Advisor to Donald Trump, was interrogated for weeks about questions, and they literally did ask her repeatedly, "What did you have for breakfast?" Literally, and she knew if she says I had 2 eggs one day, and then she says I had a handful of eggs the next day, that they could indict her because the answer not necessarily inconsistent, but just differently worded, and they went after her over and over and over. We have seen this. This is worse than what happened in the Obama administration, where many of us are going to remember the famous Lois Lerner case, where conservatives were trying to establish not-for-profit organizations. And under the direction of Barack Obama, she was spiking all of those applications in secret. This is now being done in the open. It is to intimidate all of us. We are not allowed to disagree with this regime. We are not allowed to express our dissent. We are to stay in line. And if we don't, they come after us.
It's stunning. I keep an annotated version of the abuses and usurpations from that other long hair from Charlottesville, Jefferson, wrote some years ago. And it's stunning. You go through the list and how many of those things are still being or are now again being perpetrated against a citizenry that are no longer even subjects, but actually opponents to the government rather than the citizens whom they derive their just powers from. Dan, how do we get this back?
I'll tell you, there's only one Democrat in all of Congress who has criticized his leadership in this regime for oppressing conservative voices. Ro Khanna of California. He's the only Democrat who has expressed concern or opposition to what is happening. Only one. What is it going to take to restore our country? Well, decent people are going to have to be willing to stand up for what's right, even if it's going to cost them, reputation or income. As Americans, we understand that our Constitution is based on this belief that we are to govern ourselves, and that is a gift from God. For those of us of faith, you have to understand this is a calling to protect these rights and preserve these rights. So, all of your listeners, they either have a choice to cower inside a cave to avoid what the Biden administration is dishing out. Or we stand up to this administration and stand up for America.
I know there's a lot of people who want to create this psychosis, the Mandela effect. You didn't really remember what you think you remember kind of thing. But I see what Matt Taibbi is facing, and I feel like there are going to be more and more mini Mandelas in this American construct right now as the authoritarians in Washington are in the corner right now. They're desperately trying to hold on to what they have. Are more Americans going to have to spend time in jail like the ones who are still in jail awaiting even hearings on what they may have been doing on January 6th, just under the subject matter of we didn't like where you were or who you were hanging out with, so we're just going to hold on to you until you confess?
Yeah, I don't understand where the traditional left is. In the past, the idea of holding somebody without indicting them behind prison bars, and there's some of these January 6th protesters who are just languishing in prison. Nothing is happening. They're just sitting there. And the left is okay with that.
Even worse. So Marjorie Taylor Greene goes to visit them the other day, and now her government Twitter account has been suspended.
It is outrageous. The Media Research Center's Twitter accounts were suspended, at the same time.
Oh my gosh!
Unless we take down a tweet where all we did is say that the Trans Day of Violence is scheduled for next Monday.
Yeah.
All we did was post the flyer that they had, and our Twitter accounts have been shut down until we delete that tweet.
Oh gosh!
But the left, when they criticized Donald Trump for calling for protests in New York if he gets indicted, that was okay for the left to attack him. All we do is report on a news item, and our Twitter accounts have been shut down.
And that does it for us this week from Freedom and Prosperity Radio and the Virginia Institute for Public Policy. Don't forget our education event coming up on the 25th. My name is Joe Thomas, and for all of us here, until next week, so long, and thanks for all the fish.